So, good evening and welcome everyone. This seminar we are trying to focus on the use of AI and data science and how we are using it in the industry of healthcare. And also, our primary agenda is to understand how data science and AI is being used to fight COVID. So, there are multiple dimensions in which data science is being used to fight for a fight against COVID. So that's what we will be going through this whole webinar. Now, at the end of this webinar, we are trying to understand how a brief overview and other concepts of healthcare as well as AI. Introducing myself, I am Gaurav. I work as an AI engineer at Perspect AI. Our agenda for the webinar is as such: COVID-19's tracking and prediction, research and diagnostics, drug discovery using AI, AI-driven pandemic response, and data science in stratified healthcare and precision medicine. So, as it was said by late Steve Jobs, that joining the dots, it's easier to understand how whenever we look back, and if we start looking straight away, it will be tougher. So, we'll try to implement that within this webinar and try to understand healthcare first, how data science is slowly being implemented into healthcare and into pandemic response, and then we will be going towards COVID-19. So, introducing to understand first we will be getting into stratified healthcare and precision medicine. What is stratified healthcare? Stratified healthcare is somewhere where we are subgrouping or identifying patients based on their different biomarkers or responses to treatments or how their diseases are. While precision medicine, it's something where the medications are tailored towards each and every individual or the characteristics of that individual. So, when we say stratified healthcare, it's in machine learning terms, it's something where we are classifying it into different labels so that they become subgroups which can be fed into a system to understand. When we're talking about precision medicine, it's more of a medication to individuals which will have lesser and lesser side effects. Precision medicine also moves towards more of preventive nature rather than curing. This would hugely benefit us when we are talking in terms of healthcare. So when I'm telling you we are precision medicine would cater to each and every individual, does that mean that all of us will have unique medicines, or and we will have the 8 billion people on earth, each and everyone will have unique medicines? No, that's certainly not possible. That's financially it's not feasible because that will churn up the price of drugs at enormous level. But so we need to understand how this will work. So that would be covered in the later part of the webinar. So let's first start by understanding how different medications are working. So currently we are using traditional medicines. Traditional medicines are medicines which work on a single drug for all. So whichever disease it is, that drug would be given to you irrespective of the side effects that can occur. So let's take for example, ivermectin is a very common drug that is being prescribed for treatment of COVID-19 or to recover from the comorbidities. But then again, ivermectin has certain side effects for different people. People having diabetes or people having high sugar, they have different kind of reaction to these medications. But then, right now, our solution is going towards traditional medicine so that we can fight against these comorbidities and recover faster against COVID-19. When we are talking to the next step, which is coming right now, is stratified medicine. That's why whenever we are anyone who has symptoms and they go to certain doctors for the treatment of, we'll start with the example of COVID-19, and go for the testing of COVID-19, they are asked to do different kinds of tests as well so that whenever the medication is prescribed to them, they can be subgroup, and the medication could be given to them based on their those subgroups. This helps the patient to not have any radical reaction to the medications. So that's one example of stratified medicine. When we are talking about precision medicine, that's something which is in the future. But right now, what we are doing is we are having it in some segments of cancer treatment. So we all know cancer treatment is done via chemotherapy. Chemo and the radiations have huge impact on all of us. So this to reduce this impact, we're using precision medicine. What does precision medicine do? It tries to understand the genetic alteration that happens with whenever with your tumor, and based on that, it tries to prepare a drug which normalizes those genetic mutations and bring you back into a normal scenario. This doesn't have the side effects of a radiation, and this and the genetic treatment as well. And when you have to get your genetic data is something which is covered under most of the medical insurances. Why there is a requirement of stratifying our healthcare scenario? What it does, it gives us huge access to subgroups of people. Now, whenever the government is also trying to make policies for different healthcare units for different regions, they can access these subgroups and deploy these policies. Even when you're having a medical insurance, this is hugely beneficial for both the parties, that they understand what they're most susceptible to, and they can give the results. So that's where stratification of healthcare is useful. Now we can also see that there are different types of stratification. The government and different countries, based on the user case, they try to stratify in different ways. Now disease subtype stratification implies into different types of diseases, how different symptoms of the diseases, and based on that a stratification is done. That's a very rarely used certification as of now. One of the biggest used certification is based on risk profiles. So you might have heard of different risk profiles when we are talking about COVID as well. There are people with mild and moderate symptoms, there are people with extreme symptoms. So this is what risk profiles are. Risk. So that's how our risk profiles come up as well. Again, with demographics, it's mostly on how the countries and different play and the demographics works. With socioeconomic factors, it's mostly how your financial instruments work. So something like country like US, they have a different kind of healthcare infrastructure, while whereas in India, your economic factor and your social factor is even more diverse. With such a huge population, you have different people living in different social backgrounds and different economic levels. So that's when stratification helps for policy making and even for making better policies. With biomarkers, that's something very interesting. What biomarkers does is helps you understand the different cause or the roots of the disease, and that makes you somewhat more understandable what kind of medication is required. Now, where does data science come into picture? So, since most of us over here want to understand the use of AI, so that's where we are looking to understand how data science comes into this picture. So, the basic and the most important ones are radiology, medical diagnostics, genomics, and in medicine. Hmm. Medicine, one of the biggest thing which we can see is the current vaccination that's being developed or the repurposement of drugs. They have been hugely accelerated. Never in the history of mankind has a vaccine been found in such a quick and rapid manner. So more on that as we go ahead. So how does AI in radiology work? So we have and that too, radiology is something which is one of the fields in healthcare which has huge amount of data set. MRIs, CTs, X-rays, they give you a lot of data, and they are again pretty big. Whenever a data science project is done, that image data is specifically 3D. They're mostly in DICOM files, and it's in huge database. So big data also comes into picture. How the work is done in AI and radiology is something where we're doing acquisition, then pre-processing of data to kind of make the data more normalized, how we are going to understand. Then the images are created, which are DICOM files. Then we go to the image-based task. So what does do these image-based tasks does? They do detection. They characterize based on each disease how these diseases are different diseases. Let's say we have a lung X-ray, actually more of a CT scan of your lungs. So in that part, there are different kinds of masses. When you have cancer or some other disease, the masses come into picture. So that's when the image-based task comes into picture. They characterize it, and then the reports are generated and integrated with diagnostics. So what do these image-based tasks kind of help us do is let's fasten up the process. It just doesn't make your process easier, it also quickens up. Right now, a CT scan result can be, you can get a result within a day, but that was not the case. With these computer vision techniques, is something where radiology has been hugely benefited. As we move ahead, slowly and slowly, the reports as well would be automated, and you would be getting more of automated reports and diagnostics as well. So the next part is where we're talking about medical diagnosis. This, this is where we are taking the result from the previous report, from the previous scans. We're getting the reports, and we are trying to get the results. One of the biggest things that has been achieved in this was understanding skin cancer from the skin lesions. uh, this was a huge classification task which was done. Classification of multiple skin lesions were done, and you could understand the severity of your cancer, and based on that, your treatment was done. Anyone's treatment was available. So this also increased a faster process and kind of prevented a person from going into a more riskier position, as well as it helped the doctors to understand when they could start medication for each and every stage. Another thing, diabetic retinopathy is another interesting field where diagnosis has been available. Even Google did a huge and a big uh, surveillance in India. They targeted a few villages where they worked on DR. So diabetic retinopathy and the analytics that Google derived from this DR was enormous. They also related from a DR scans what could be the age, the sex, from a DR diabetic retinopathy scan, as well as they could also predict whether you could have a cardiovascular attack or not. Definitely, the model was 65% accurate, and more work needs to be done. But this is a huge developmental area where using just an eye retina scan, we could understand a lot of possibilities of a human body. The the biggest field where AI or data science is being used is genomics. Back 10 years back, genomics was something which used to cost around millions of dollars, especially with genome sequencing. But with the current technologies, genome sequencing has been brought down to $1,000, which and could be done within a day or two. Gene editing is another technique. So we will get into these techniques one by one. So within genomics, these are the four places where we are going: genome sequencing, gene editing. Even direct consumer companies have come into place. Within Hyderabad, we have Map My Genome, who do genomics, even like help you plan your diets based on your DNA. So before I get onto this, do we have any questions?
Guys, if you have any questions,
Yeah.
you can unmute yourself and ask those questions if you want, since we are all on
Yes.
the live call.
I guess Abhishek posted one question and he is not here.
Yeah, it seems like he might have lost connection or something. I don't know. You can go ahead and answer that question if you want.
Yeah. So Abhishek asked whether precision medicine recognizes a person's DNA. So it doesn't just work on a, it understands how the DNA works, and based on that they give the output and corrects the DNA. It won't repair or do something with your DNA. It will be fixing those cells. So each and every DNA has protein layers. So these protein layers is something which would be getting fixed when we have these precision medicines in terms of cancer as well. So cancer is something which is being treated using precision medicine. So how they're doing is they're understanding the mutations that happen and they're trying to rectify those mutations and getting back to the normal side. Okay, I guess we don't have any other questions.
Yeah, seems like
Yeah,
we don't have any questions. You can go ahead.
yeah. So let's start with understanding a bit of genomics. The See, whenever researchers are working, they try to understand how our DNA are sequenced. The sequencing of the DNA helps us to understand how our whole body functions. It's the function. It gives us the blueprint of our all activities, all our immunity, or how vulnerable we are to viruses. That's where that's what researchers' primary focus is to. Once researchers understand that, they can bring on a cure for this. Hmm. Now our DNA is composed into four units: Mhm. Adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. So they are always in pairs. We have always heard of pairs in DNA. So A always pairs with T and C pairs with G. And moreover, our DNA is made up of chromosomes. Chromosomes are mostly protein units. We have around 20,000 pairs, out of which 23 are the ones for human genome. So 20,000 are the protein layers which we have within our body. Hmm. So how does genome sequencing work? So whenever researchers are working, they try to understand the sequence of our DNA. They understand how that sequence is working. They work on the sequencing models. We currently have different models such as the latest one is BLAST, and try to predict the probability how an individual would react to a drug. So that's what genome sequencing does. While with gene editing, with technologies such as CRISPR Cas9, what they do is break into the DNA and try to repair it. Once that repair is done, we get our our damaged cells are more likely to recover faster, and this repair also helps us to not interfere with other DNAs. So we will understand how these drugs work when we are into the AI in drug section. So AI in medicine helps in multiple ways. Drug discovery is one of them. Also decision support system, which helps the doctors to understand what kind of decisions should be made. Currently all the systems that's there in this decision system, they are all assistive in nature, and we should always have a doctor in place because healthcare is something where we trust the doctors, or we that's why. So AI is always assistive whenever we are talking in healthcare terms. Then it also therapy over here means what kind of medication or doses can be given to the patients, and reducing human error. So that's where we are bound to make mistakes. So always a second help is useful. So back in 2015, even Barack Obama, when he was the president of USA, he started the Precision Medicine Initiative. This was again done on a huge scale. So the initiative was on precision medicine, but the first steps were on stratifying. So as I said, we have to join the dots. So that's where precision medicine comes into place. First, the stratification of the whole healthcare scenario happens, and then we understand how the current diseases and can be eliminated. That's what that's where precision medicine also comes into place. So once you have precision medicine, it's also called personalized medicine. So it helps you to it also helps you to understand your own genetical structures, and when you start your diets and everything based on that, all of us will live a more healthy life. Now, what are the contributing factors to precision medicine? Genomics definitely play a major role. Post that, we have our lifestyle preferences. So our lifestyle preferences make us understand how our different diet can be done, how we are living, the current environmental circumstances, our health history, medical records. They are, so that again plays a part, since it helps the doctors and the researchers understand how your body might react or has already reacted to the given medications and different compliances that our body are. There are different advantages which are already noted down on this slide. The biggest advantage, which I would say, is where we would be reducing any kind of side effects that we have with most medications right now. So, how precision medication work is where we will have a subgroup of people who react similarly. So their genetic mutations are similar. So we'll start with AI and drug discovery. How does AI and drug discovery get streamlined? We, First it starts with data mining. It starts with data mining, where different types of literature, research papers, and all the available theories are available for a particular disease. They're extracted using different techniques in NLP, and then these features are streamlined and put it into use. First, we need to understand the common nomenclature that goes on during a drug discovery. What is target? A target is the molecule which is associated with disease, where we have to apply the medication. So the medication has to go straight to this target and nullify its effect. What is compound or a lead? So a compound is a chemical which has its own therapeutic benefits, and it also has some undesirable properties. So a compound can nullify the effect of the target, but again, it has some effects which will create problem for any particular individual. Now, what are these properties? They are the side effects, the toxicity, or any kind of effectiveness that it has. The drugs. Now, a drug is made from the compound after we have removed the toxic effects of those of the compound, and that's when we finally get a drug which will only go towards a target, and we will be cured. So that itself is a long term, and making a drug discovery, it was a very long process and a lengthier process. So at a very average rate, it used to take around 10 years, and our pricing would go till $1.8 billion and even more. So that's a complete timeline of how a drug discovery process takes into place, with different target validation, optimization, the phases. There are there are three phases: phase one, phase two, and phase three. So in phase one of human trials, you have 10 to 15 people who are being trialed with the dose. Then in the next phase, you have people in hundreds of numbers who have, some of them already have the flu, and the next part don't have the flu, and in the third phase you have a bigger segment of number of people in thousands of scale, of different subgroups, and who already have the flu or who have recovered, and then the medication is given to them to check whether this medication works on all of them. Once this process is done, it's again submitted to agencies of all the countries. Wa- Once that clearance is given, then only a drug is available in the market. So, how do the new age AI company works? They have AI in different scenarios. They have a knowledge graph which has which is a result of a model, and they continuously use AI. They have structured data and unstructured data, which is pre-processed, and using AI is fed into the knowledge graph. Mm. Then this particular AI is also used for target identification. It tries to identify the target, which part of the tissue is to be targeted with the drugs. Then it's again fed back to the data field. Then you have the lead optimization where different types of toxicity and everything is removed. And then we go to the clinical trials. We get different drugs, and that's when you get a result. So if you're wondering what kind of models we use mostly recurrent neural networks, because they have a tendency to learn and store what has been previously taught, and that's something which is used in the healthcare field, as opposed to CNNs, which are majorly used in computer vision tasks and are very famous in the whole AI unit. Hmm. Now, even within the compound universe, a compound universe is something is where all different kinds of molecules and elements are available, and the size, depending on what kind of definition you're using, it can go from 10 to about 20 to 10 to about 60. So we are often interested only in particular regions of the compound to get the target. So first we have to do that target identification. Once these compounds are found, we use generative algorithms to get the solution. So how do we efficiently explore the compound universe? So traditionally, our um, our chemists used to design a drug based on the knowledge, then synthesize it in the lab, and then do experimental assays on with people and find out the results. While right now, with the advantage of data science, what we do is we do a search and optimization for designing the drugs. Then the computers have excellent computational skills, so they do the modeling with different algorithms and get the result. Now, with those results, we feed them to a GAN model and try to understand how it could react. And we create computer simulations to understand how it would react with a human being. So that's where we understand a complete compound design cycle. Now, this is where multi-parameter object optimization also comes. So we have to understand the affinity, toxicity, and selectivity of the compound. So whenever we are finding a drug, we need to understand whether the drug binds well with the uh, target or not. If it doesn't bind well, it doesn't have a proper locking parameter, it won't nullify its effect. Additionally, we also have to understand that the toxicity is not there. It doesn't affect the rest of the cells of a human being. And when we are going towards selectivity, it's that particular compound or unit has to attach to the target itself only. It shouldn't be harming any other part. So let's say in the case of COVID-19, any drug that is found, it should attach to just the COVID virus, the coronavirus, rather than getting attached to any other RNA cells. So how the whole process works? First, you have the compound data, which is structured and experimental, which we get. Then we feature it and pre-train the model to get a general model. So these are mostly LSTMs. Mm. These are mostly LSTM models. We find a result. 95% are and coincidentally, the 95% of the drugs are valid uh, and valid. And out of that, 60 to 70% drugs are novel drugs, which we find new. Then it goes into a reinforcement learning where we use the previous multi-parameter scoring to feed it into the reinforcement learning. We also take the user feedback. So currently, the user feedback or the human loop can't be removed for accuracy purposes. Mm, So this whole process goes into a loop, and we finally get a drug. So the reinforcement learning process is something more like a hill climb process that's done in reinforcement learning. Now, how do we featureize and pre-train the models? Within chemistry, we have something called SMILES. SMILES helps a computer understand the chemical structure. Uh, just give me a minute. I'll have some water. Yeah. So SMILES are simplified molecular input line entry system. It is not something new. It has been there into the chemistry world for a long time. It is now being implemented into our systems. So whenever we have a featured compounds, it standardizes them and it tries to uh, predict the next compound or the element that could be there. It's kind of a language model for your chemistry world. Hmm. So as I said, we were using RNN. When we look at this feature, we have feature and pre-trained model. Featured and the pre-trained models are mostly smile generated compounds which have these feature compounds. They trained, then we have the trained LSTM models, and once that's done, the new compounds are there. With these new compounds, we then again go back for the multi-parameter objective scoring, and we get the user feedback, and we do a complete reiteration of the cycle. With the user feedback and with the scoring part, we try to get the scores. So once we have a score which satisfies the result, we finalize that this is going to be the drugs, and this is our final result. So this process with the uses of computers and data science has been hugely accelerated. Earlier, this whole process used to take around 3 to 4 years. Now our old ALS and ALS drug was found within 3 months, so by Benevolent AI. So Benevolent AI
Gaurav, you're not audible right
yeah,
now.
yeah, I wasn't speaking.
Acha, okay. I thought something happened.
No, I wasn't speaking. Yeah. So, Benevolent AI is a company which focuses on creating drugs and different healthcare units using AI. They're hugely into implementation of data science into healthcare field. They developed drugs for ALS within 3 months using this entire process. So traditionally, we would have taken around 1.5 to 3 years to create a drug for ALS, which has been around for several years. Our next topic is pandemic response, how AI is helping in pandemic response. So, apart from using a general drug development process, we have different things like chatbots are currently being implemented to do a faster diagnostics. In case of COVID, a government launched app Arogya Setu is there, and there are private applications which have MFine. So they help individuals understand how severe their symptoms are and whether they need to get to a chemist and a doctor or not. While radiology in using CT scans, MRI, everything have been fastened and done quicker. Outbreak tracing is something which is being used for pandemic response to understand the clusters where there are more people. Hmm. So over here, chatbots helps us understand, self-assess people. They also inform the government. So once you have the data of so many people infected or not infected, the government can also make use of the data to make the clusters. So we had red zones, green zones. So that's something. what chatbots are implementing. It's a two-way process on both the sides. While with outbreak tracking, it's there are different models which we'll be talking about later on, which help us understand where else or predict where new clusters will happen. Even for COVID-19, there is a company which actually declared COVID new influenza symptoms are seen in China. And so that's where outbreak tracking comes into place. Radiology, we have already discussed in depth how it mostly aids healthcare workers for faster analysis of medical images. So now we will get to COVID-19's tracking and prediction. How COVID-19 is being used for tracking? We have different mobile applications which helps the government to keep a track of all the people's chatbots helps to understand our situation and inform the authorities. While there's being even being surveillance done in different streets of metros to see the offenders, people who are not wearing masks, and try to track them and stop them from becoming super spreaders. That's something which was seen in Kerala, where there are a lot of where there were a lot of super spreaders, and then the government had to come into action. So these kind of surveillance and tracking is being used. And then additionally, analysis based on the applications where we have fed in the data can help us understand whether we are more susceptible or not. Let's say I have a few symptoms and that's just coughing and nothing else. It's possible that I might be prone to COVID-19 or not. So it will help me keep a track and also help me understand, okay, if in within these many days the disease has increased, I have more symptoms, or it has persistently been there. So based on that analytics, we can get the results, how it has affected. Another use case, which is a major use case right now, is the mental health strain that has happened due to COVID-19. We as humans are not used to staying at homes. So, and we don't like to stay at home for longer durations. And this pandemic has forced us to stay here and it has strained us mentally. So a lot of applications are there out there, like Healthily and other applications, which try to understand your mental health. Once they keep a track of your journal, they analyze it using NLP and language models and give a finite result ki this is a possibility and we should consult therapy or we should consult medication or meditation. So there are different processes which are being used, not just to stop COVID, but also the co-effects that has happened because of that. And different diagnostics, like apart from the RT-PCR test, CT scans and blood tests are very important these days to understand whether we are getting whether we are infected by the virus or not. Singapore's university recently launched a new artificial intelligence which could predict just using CT scans, and not even an RT-PCR test is required to determine whether it's a COVID positive or a negative patient. So all of these features, when we combine them all together into a single unit, we get something which is helpful for the whole healthcare infrastructure. Now, when we're talking about predictions of COVID-19, we epidemiologists use SIR and SER models. These models are mostly used for predicting where it where we will have more clusters and where the epidemic can hit more. So this is how SIR and SER models work. So we'll talk more about SIR. So what is SIR? SIR is S is for susceptible. Susceptible people are those people who have the chance of getting infected. So in the current scenario, it's all of us. All of us have the possibility of getting infected with, and then infectious people are the ones who have been infected and they're spreading the infection. Recovered people are the ones who have recovered. So when we have this as time functions, so this S over T, the S over T, I over T, and R over T. In the graph over here, we can see that initially the susceptible people will be higher as compared to infectious, and recovered will be way low. And the graphs merge at a point where infection rate is the highest. This is where we are talking about whether we have hit the peak or not. Once we have hit the peak of the graph, which is the common terminology right now we are dealing with, is when we will start recovering at an accelerated rate and will flatten the graph of the infection. While a more modified model is SEIR. SEIR also takes into place. So we break down the infection into two places with E as exposed. The exposed people are the ones who have been exposed to the virus, uh, but they are not spreading the virus as infectious people, but they have a probability of spreading it like asymptomatic carriers. So this is where infection E comes into place. Now, these models have been modified even more when we were talking about COVID-19 since. So more new equations came into place, which took into the time where people are staying indoors, the latent health of population, and then how much travel individuals have done. Based on this, we were getting results. Uh, Based on this, we were getting results. So when these features are combined and as features and then fed into the model. Again, over here we are using RN, and most of the healthcare researchers use LSTM model and predict. This helps us to get understand whether a new place or a new region is perceptible to getting the virus. Now, there's a lot of research which has been done on COVID-19. Mostly the blueprint of the R&D is completely there in WHO's website. Okay, so do we have any questions in till now? Hello, do we have any questions from anyone?
I don't think so.
Yeah, cool. So we will start getting into the key focus areas of the research. So the key focus area is mostly the genetics, the structure of the virus, how the infection can be prevented, both in terms of uh, public mobility as well as building immunity. The side effects which this virus is causing, the structure and different effects of this virus. So I have attached a video over here which you can which will play post this slide. In the video, it's excellently described the different structure of the virus and how the pathogenesis work.
Hi, this is Peter from Anatomy Zone. This video is the first in a new series we'll be producing on clinical conditions and their anatomical and pathological correlates. We will look at each video
The audio is very low, Gaurav, from the video.
and how it's structured. This video is the first in a new series we'll be producing on clinical conditions and their anatomical and pathological correlates. We will be taking a look in
Hello. Yeah. I'll do one thing. I'll post the link of the video. People who are interested can watch the complete structure and the pathogenesis of COVID-19. The idea was to play this video while we are doing it on YouTube, but I think Meet may or yesterday also we had very less audio.
Yeah, the audio is like you can hear it, but it's very low. It's not properly audible from the video.
Yeah. Yes, yes, true. So yeah, let's get to the diagnostics that has that's done on for COVID-19. We generally have the RT-PCR test, the CT scan, and the blood test. So unlike a DNA virus, which can be directly detected using a DNA test, coronavirus is RNA based, and it's made it's similar to what Ebola influenza is. Our polymerase chain reaction (PCR), what it does, it amplifies the DNA chain, and it helps to detect the DNA of the particular virus. But since coronavirus is an RNA, the similar PCR couldn't be used to test and validate whether any individual has a virus or not. Now, that's when a reverse transcription came into place, and the reverse transcription uh, converts the RNA into your DNA molecules, and then we have the PCR. So that's why RT-PCR is available. What PCR does, it creates an heat a very stable DNA enzyme, and we get to understand the detectability of a virus. Now with AI into picture, the diagnostics have changed, and hopefully it's going to change more. Like NIH is currently using AI for diagnostic treatment and monitoring all the three processes. What it's doing is it's doing diagnosis using CT scan. It's monitoring the patient. It's all the continuous scans and the different types of CTs, and then it's treating based on those differences and the mutation that has happened. That's somewhere where our stratified medicine comes into place to help the doctors. And even researchers from King's London College made a model which was 80% accurate to understand whether the person is COVID positive or not, just based on loss of smell, severe or persistent cough, and fatigue. So that's where the research diagnostics of AI has happened. So this is somewhere AI has in whole case AI healthcare, the all units come into place. It has accelerated the use of AI. Like stratification of healthcare now is the need of the hour, so that we can understand how different people or different units can work together.
Your voice is breaking,
And
Gaurav.
it's breaking. Oh, boy. Anyways, we are towards the end of it. So, Kapil, you can do your announcement and I'll speak for the rest of the minutes.
Okay, sure. Can you open the crowdfund page? So
Wait, can you post
it's
the link? I don't have the
it's
crowdfund page right now saved
donate.coderplex.org.
here. Okay.
So I just wanted to mention before the end of the session that we are organizing a crowdfunding campaign for Codaplex Foundation, just to raise some money for our foundation so that we can continue doing the work we do, organizing sessions like this on a weekly basis and managing the community and helping people out, giving them advice, support, whatever they require and need to kind of learn and progress in their career. So if any of you would like to, you can go to our crowdfunding page. You can go to donate.codaplex.org and you can click on the crowdfunding campaign there. It's loading right now. Yahan pe. I think there's some internet issue.
Yeah, it's loaded here.
Acha. Just click on the support Codaplex Foundation. No, the upar wala. Just click on that. Just click on that. That should open the page. So this is the crowdfund page, and you can contribute any amount. You don't have to contribute any high amount. Even a small contribution would also be extremely helpful. We are just trying to, reach as many people as possible. And even a small amount of less than 100 rupees would be extremely helpful as well. So if you would like to just help us out, it would be we would really appreciate that. So that's all I wanted to announce.
Yes. Okay. So, anyways, we are towards the end of the session. If you guys have any questions on the particular topic of healthcare and AI, please let me know. Okay, I guess we don't have any questions. There's one announcement from my end as well. In my current company at Perspective AI, we are hiring React developers. So you or any of your friends who are looking to join a new role as a React developer, please do write to us. We are looking for both React JS and React Native. Okay.
Okay, cool. Thank you everyone for joining. We'll see you next week with another session. And we have a few sessions actually planned out for the rest of this month. So we'll make the announcement soon and hopefully we'll not have any technical issues in our future sessions as we have had with this one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Chalo,
Thank
bye.
you, everyone. Bye.